Hi and welcome to Random Rogers Big Picture for the week of March 13th. Actually, March 15th, excuse me. Hi, Trixie. So one thing on the agenda this week is what's going on these days with Jim Cramer in the media with The Daily Show and all of that. I actually had two friends of mine ask me different questions about Cramer, and one, my buddy V, asked, if I think of Cramer as a journalist or not. So I wanted to read my email, my answer to you, and maybe chime in with a couple of other things. I don't think of Jim as a journalist, more of an op-ed guy. I think he has too many outlets and so says too many things. So what may be happening is he says he likes one stock on his TV show, but then something changes, or he thinks it changes 2 days later, and he says to sell it in a video or article for TheStreet.com. So this makes following him close to impossible. This is not to say that following him is a good idea, but people do follow him. I never watched the show, and that's true. I can't stand the screaming and the sound effects, but I'm TiVoing it right now. So this was Friday afternoon. I recorded Friday's show because I wanted to see if he said anything about the Jon Stewart interview. So TiVoing it right now to see what he says about The Daily Show. I think he's put himself in a position where he cannot win, and where helping people, to the extent he really wants to help people, it is close to impossible. An example I gave of this, and maybe it's not a great example, but he takes a lot of credit for telling people to get 5-year money out of the stock market. He did this sometime last fall on the Today Show, and he did. There's no doing that, no second guessing that. He clearly said 5-year money should not be in the stock market. But the thing, and I touched on this at the time, money that truly is 5-year money, and well, I think a lot of people don't necessarily get that right, but money that truly is 5-year money, like money that's earmarked for down payment on a house or a college fund for a kid who's 13 or older, that money never belongs in the stock market. This is planning. This is not stock market calling. 5-year money or shorter, it cannot be subject to going down in value. If you've got 40 grand saved for a house that you're going to buy in 3 years, that money can't go down in value. Same thing with a college fund. The meltdown in 2000, that taught us that money, once a kid gets to 13, and you probably start reducing before then, but once money gets to 13, or once the kid gets to 13, you pretty much can't have it in the stock market. Money doesn't, the stocks don't necessarily come back in 5 years. This 10-year thing that's going on, that's a much rarer event, and I don't know that I would say the exact same thing for 10-year money most of the time, but for 5 years, unambiguously, the money shouldn't be in the market. And so if he taught people that point, 5-year money should never be in the market, that's great, but that isn't what he was saying. I'm not going to do a hatchet job on some of the inconsistencies, that Bear Stearns thing, the way Stewart portrayed it, not in the interview, but before the interview. I'm not sure why he was so aggressive in saying, he didn't say to buy it. I don't know. I don't know what that's all about. But the bigger macro for anybody who takes in stock market content is, one, most people do have an agenda of some sort. I like to think I don't have an agenda, but maybe I do. Maybe you think I do, and so that your perception becomes the reality. If I do have an agenda, it's much less of an agenda than most folks. I'm going to say I don't believe this blog is an overt shill for our money management practice. I like to think that it's not. But, before I saw the Cramer on Stewart, I read somewhere something about, that Cramer does it for the ratings. He admitted to doing it for the ratings. I didn't necessarily take that from watching the show. I watched it Friday morning. I TiVoed it. It was on at 11 o'clock my time. I TiVoed it and I watched it. He alluded to doing it for the ratings, But, the histrionics alone, for me, is a turnoff. I don't really watch the show. He mentioned me one time on it for something I wrote on TheStreet.com. That time I watched it. And I started to watch it yesterday. The opening segment, he did it like a spoof about his battle with Stewart when it turned out to be the Bananas with Martha Stewart. And then he got off that. And if he got back to it, I didn't watch. I gave up like 2 minutes in after the joke about Martha Stewart. It kind of makes me wonder if he went on Martha Stewart to line up the joke ahead of time. I don't think there's a lot of value from the stock picks from the show. Barron's tries to, assess the performance. I don't even think that's the point. I don't think that matters. What matters is he does talk about process. You either can learn from that or you can't. That's up to you. But the stock picks in that context, especially the call-in segment, I don't know why people invest on that. If they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. If you're curious, the stuff I tend to read, you can see on the sidebar. There's plenty of validity, though I will say with regard to Cramer. In hearing what it is, I look forward to the segments he does with Aaron, only from the standpoint of, okay, so I'm reading what I read, I've talked about that, but I might be missing something that's going on. And he does have his finger on the pulse of certain things that are going on. The conclusion he draws, may be right or it may be wrong, but he has his finger on the pulse of what's happening. Well, that is useful. There's utility there. And in a 2 or 3 minute dose, I find utility in that. Maybe I'm unique in that, but there is utility. I don't really give a crap about any of his conclusions. The stuff he's watching, also the blogs that he writes. I don't know if he does any articles on TheStreet.com as opposed to blog-like posts. I read some of those, not too many. But again, what is he watching? That to me is interesting. Because he's got to watch, and I think he gets a lot of help on doing this, but he's got to watch way more things than I need to watch, the things that are important enough to him. I believe he cares about what's happening in the market and talking about what he thinks is important. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I do find some utility in that. I have yet to find much utility in his conclusions, though. Hopefully that makes sense. The one thing I would say is you can't really get carried away with anybody. This blog, some people get real worked up when I get something wrong, or occasionally trying to defend when I'm getting heckled about defending something I got right. Kind of misses the point on both sides. Thanks for the people who have defended me, and thanks, or not thanks. I don't necessarily need to be heckled, especially when it makes no. There's not much context to it, or someone pulls something out of context, but it misses the point. The point here is process. If you visit the site regularly, you probably care about my process, which, then leaves me wondering, the people who dump on active management, one guy said active management equals Bernie Madoff. I mean, if you really think that this is a blog written by a guy who's an active manager who believes in market timing using individual stocks, not aggressive timing, it's not in and out timing, but it's a form of market timing using mostly individual stocks. If some part of that doesn't appeal to you, I don't know why you read the site. I think the content's good, but of course I would. But whatever. If you get no utility and you read this anyway, I'm never going to understand that. How about that? Oh, Nelly, we got a whole lot of college basketball coming up this weekend. Pretty excited. I ordered the extra innings baseball package without getting a beating from my wife, so I got that going for me. Lots of sports. It's ramping up. It's a great time of year. Have a good weekend.